and they seem to kind of fall off. You just spoke about training, and you're very, very educated on how to train, how to keep your body in shape. You talked about 18 kilos, just want to bring that up. What is it about your training that keeps you still competing at such a high level while other veterans might be kind of falling off?
I think it's a combination of support and family and stuff I have around me that, and my martial arts is a lifestyle. I think that, and I can't speak for other people, but I think that sometimes, like, even when I don't have a fight, I train and spar in the gym and wrestle. Like, do I want to do Tabatas workouts? Absolutely not. If you sit there and say, get on the treadmill, we're going to bring up your heart rate, I'll be like, yeah, my back's feeling stiff today. But if we're like, hey, we're going to spar and work out, then, hey, what did you catch me with? Like, oh, when I was in Holland, they showed me the switch kick to the inside leg. I was like, oh, really? Show it to me. So I love martial arts. So I think that's one thing that really has been a basis of why I'm able to stay in the gym and train, because I enjoy. I'll stay after practice, sit there. Even if I'm too tired to train myself, I go to Gorman and wrestle with one of my coaches, the head coach at Gorman High School in Las Vegas. Practice will be over, and I'll still sit there and I'm watching high school kids wrestle back and forth, hit moves, and hey man, that was nice. What'd you do right there? Ankle. It's not benefiting me career-wise. Like, well, you can get up and go. It's like, yeah, but I enjoy being here. This is fun. I'm watching guys do, and girls, pretty badass girl on the team, do things that I enjoy.
So there's two schools of thought with martial arts and martial arts fighters, right? There's one that say, I have a different personality when the bell rings. And there's other people who say that when you fight with your actual real personality, who you really are inside. Which one are you?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that your personality is such a complex thing. I think in psychology, you can't sit there and break someone down with thousands of different, finite, puzzles put together, pieces to a puzzle. And so you very much do bring your personality into how you fight. But then the thing is that I think that to add to it, to make it more of a deeper statement, is there's a different size to your personality. Just like, how you might talk with your wife when she brings up a situation. Not the same we discuss with a complete stranger, where you're more comfortable with your wife, so you might be more, So it's like, well, you were loud with her, but you were easy with me. It's like, different sides of my personality. So I think fighting is very much that way. You're not going to have something that's completely, I don't think it's as simple as a switch, that, you're this guy, and also, boom, you're an animal at this point. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think that you do fight with a certain, how you do. You can see in when I break fighters down, how they deal with arguments and discussions and talking. You can sit there and see how it correlates directly to how they deal with physical adversity, the same as mental adversity.
Frank, so we're having the press conference in New York, the fights in New Jersey. Obviously, the Madison Square Garden used to be the fight capital of the world. There's no MMA in the state of New York, at least sanctioned MMA. Just last week, there was a bill introduced to ban football for kids in New York. There's this prohibition on fighting. It doesn't look like it's going to get any easier for MMA to be sanctioned in New York. Have you given any thought to the sport? There's some of the obstacles that the sport faces, maybe some cultural headwinds that MMA faces?
No, I've given a great thought. It baffles me why the stigma about MMA can still be a dangerous sport, especially when there's other sports that are easily condoned and understood and ingrained in our history. That that's a good old sport. Your son's going to play football, and our daughters will play soccer, softball, sports that also carry a certain risk. I mean, what sport doesn't have, if you have two human beings moving around, a certain inherent risk about it? But I think that the part that I don't understand is that if two individuals want to compete at something, and we understand the risks, that, look, do I think that getting a concussion is completely safe and benign? No, I realize that there could be some dangers behind it, but so does everybody who plays football. You tell me there's an NFL player that doesn't know that, hey man, football could cause me to have some aches and pains and maybe not jump up as spryly when I'm in my 40s. Well, yeah, we understand that. Is there a parent that signs their kid up for Little League that doesn't understand that there's other kids with a helmet on, they're going to run into each other? Absolutely. We try to take safety precautions, and you try to make it as safe as possible. But the human beings were not meant to be stuck inside of a nerfed up suitcase and protected from the world. If two individuals want to go ahead and compete and train, and as long as they understand that there is a risk, it's I don't think anybody that's fighting is sitting there going, hey, you mean that there's a chance I can get my hand broken if I hit somebody? It's a stupid statement, and I don't think that by us competing and showing, the sport itself shouldn't be a measure of how you should use as a moral compass for children. I think you see how we conduct ourselves outside the octagon, and how our fans conduct themselves. I think we're an exemplary sport. So far, and I don't ever like to bash other sports, but sometimes when communicating with people that that want to ban MMA, I got to talk to their intelligence level. We don't topple cars over after Anderson Silva lost to Chris Weidman. You didn't see Brazil going out and throwing, there's still, so if you sit there and go, well, what example do they play? It's like, well, how many times you see us shake hands afterwards? Guys are, we can be in the room, all of us are in the back room together, me and Alistair, Jose Aldo, Ricardo Lamas. There was no issues. We weren't breaking into brawls. We're not thugs. I think that, children, can train in martial arts and have great conduct. And that should be an example of why you want to sanction something. The whole non-sanctioning in New York, it's other factors that have nothing to do with us.
Frank, losing skids are obviously a part of sports, but they're new to you at this point. How has the mental approach been to being on this streak and needing to get back in the win column? How has that been for you, outside of the cage in terms of training?
You just try not to dwell on something you can't control. When I'm in the gym, and if I think about a past fight, if it has something constructive that I can use to work on the moment to train, then we'll think about it and bring up video. But to sit there at home and when I'm downtime to sulk about, man, I lost that fight, we should have done this, we should have done that, that's something that we all fall into. I can't say that I've avoided that altogether. There's times I sit there and be upset, but I try not to dwell on it and try to let it consume me, because that's wasted energy that's not productive. And then I have a wife and children that are looking at me like, Daddy, you're not at the gym, could you pay attention to us? So I've tried to make sure that I stay focused and don't dwell on things I can't control.
The same thing kind of applied to being painted into a corner and folks saying between the two of you guys, the loser may be looking for work someplace else. Is that the same mentality? You just try and put that out of your head?
Yeah, it's I thought about the consequences of coming off of a fourth loss, but the one solace that I've really taken it is that if I were to have a bad experience on Saturday and I get cut from the UFC because they say that for whatever reason I went from main cards to not being able to sell any cards, which I don't see that happening anytime soon, but I'm no longer able to fight for the UFC. The retirement issues would come up in the fact, do I really want to fight for somebody else? I don't think I have an issue going to another organization and receiving a paycheck for my appearance on their poster. I still sell tickets.
You're from a wagering town. You going to watch the game on Sunday no matter what? And if so, who do you like in that game?
I really like both teams. I'm more of a fan of players, so it actually makes it to where I enjoy games more than others people, because I can watch and I have guys I like on both sides, so I'm happy whatever team wins. I just hope no one gets hurt. I'm a big fan of Peyton Manning as far as a quarterback, just his mental approach to the game. I think because of how I am, I can relate when I see interviews and how he discusses, and even on the field when he's calling out calls and changing things on the thing, and basically his own coach. On the field, general, I think he's an impressive individual.
And real quick, in terms of training, you've had to come back from some injuries before. We saw or heard about a pretty severe injury for Juliana Pena in the last day or so, and Dana had some things to say about her training camp. What do you do in a training camp to avoid a situation like that may have been a fluke? But is there a way to avoid it?
Yeah, it's risk to reward. You can't look. The most important thing we can do is fight. So when I'm in the gym, we put on big gloves and shin guards, and we're going to fight MMA, right? We can train different aspects, hit pads, hit the bag, you jump rope, road work, wrestle, drill. Yeah, all those are great, but it's a pyramid. The pinnacle, the base, foundation has to be live sparring. Going full blast against another individual who wants to go full blast against me so we can work it out. Then you can have different degrees of sparring, then you break it down. You can't avoid that. So, but at the same time, risk to reward. I'm not going to be sparring hard. My last hard sparring day was last Tuesday. Since then, no one's tried to throw a punch at me full blast with the expectations of trying to take me out. Because I know that, okay, about 10 days before, I don't want to get a cut. I don't want to hurt anything. We're good at this point. I can't stop sparring 3 weeks before and hopefully I don't get an injury, because I'm going to go 3 weeks without going live against somebody until I see my opponent. Not the safest thing. So I think you just have to be intelligent about how you approach your game and know that this is time to start winding it down and toning it down. Because, sometimes, winning and losing is not about who's in better shape. Sometimes it's who's less injured. I've noticed that as I've gotten older.
Frank, hearing you talk, it just reminds me of how great of an analyst you are. And hearing you break down those last two Overeem fights, I think you might have just saved his job even if you beat him, because you gave great reasons for why those weren't as bad of defeats as they really were. You used to do the TV stuff a lot more. Talk about first of all why that you just sort of kind of stage that out a little bit, and if say this is the end of the road for you, or when that does come, are you going to hop right back in? Because we love to see you do it.
No, absolutely. That's that's definitely an avenue that I'm going to pursue. Hopefully, I want to make it later than sooner. because once I retire from fighting, some guys come back and whatnot, but I'm 34. To retire athletically and say I'm done now, it's like, well, this guy's Dan Henderson's early 40s and he's still competing. And I started pulling back from that because I didn't want to confuse between being a fighter and being an analyst and a commentator, and be like, well, why don't you go ahead and just hang it up and go ahead and go in that realm and maybe be ushered in a certain direction and be a victim of success. And so, especially when I see some of the level of some of my other compadres that break down fights. And but that being said, definitely a route I'm going to go. And but I just want to make sure I focus on fighting now, because I can analyze and break down fights for as long as I can be able to speak. And unfortunately for my wife, I think my bullshit skills are going to last a long time.
I mean, I feel like you would have a comment on this. I mean, like you said, you're seeing it more and more. You were sort of, I think, one of the pioneers of guys fighting at the same time, being an analyst doing the TV stuff. Now we got Cormier, we got Rashad, we have Chael, who seem to be just fighting each other constantly. Is it sort of blurring the line a little bit? I mean, don't you sort of like to go home and pretend that two guys really want to fight each other and not know that they're texting each other back and forth about their next TV gig?
Yeah, or at least I try not to make anything up. If I really don't like somebody I'm fighting, I try. I don't exaggerate or sell anything and say, I just said that for the fight, because I personally, as a fan, don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that all that great shoving and pushing and animosity that wasn't real. No. And at the same time, if it's not any animosity, like I have zero animosity towards Alistair. Actually, I have a lot of respect, and I think he's a very dangerous opponent. It doesn't take away the fact that I'm going to try to take his arm off if I catch him in an armbar. Absolutely, I want to beat him, and I'm sure he wants to. If he sees me with a knee, I don't expect him to take anything off of it just because I'm a likable guy. You know what I mean? He's still going to try to put my ribs in the first row. I like that too. I like the fact that guys can sit there and be, I'm completely okay with you, but hey, we're going to see who's better at fighting. Okay, we beat each other up, and then at the end we sit back down, like, hey, so what do you want to drink? I'll take a beer. Okay, here, I'll get the first round.
Now, it's great that you say that. I mean, you recently fought Barnett. I know you guys are cool. You fought Roy Nelson. You guys are cool. You mentioned you and Alistair are cool. I got to bring up Brock Lesnar. I mean, he's sort of been in the headlines. I don't know if these are contrived or if he really might come back, whatever. If he did one day and it was before you hung up, the gloves, is that a fight you would like to do?
If I hung up the gloves, it'd be a fight that I'd come back to.
Right, and is he a guy that you legitimately dislike? Because I know at the time it seemed like it.
Yeah, it wasn't. And actually, leading up to the second fight, I kind of humored him and kind of taunted him a little bit and made jokes of it. But it wasn't until after the second fight, the way he conducted himself, that honestly, I didn't like. Because I think sometimes people say, "Well, I acted like that in the heat of the moment." I'm like, no. The heat of the moment brings out your real personality, man. You weren't being controlled and forward thinking and going, "Well, I shouldn't say this." But when you explode, it's like it's like being drunk. Like, I don't have to be drunk. Like, no, that's the real you. That's really, you're a bully or you're not a bully. That's who you are. So absolutely, if Lesnar was able to make some kind of comeback and come back, I'd love to be able to fight him.
The last couple questions here, Frank. So I mean, whenever someone like yourself is a big guy, also a good talker, I know you're not really a pro wrestling fan. Say Vince McMahon said, "Here's a couple $1 million. We want you to wrestle Brock Lesnar in WrestleMania or something like that." Would that be something you'd be intrigued by? Or are you one of the people who kind of maybe like myself thinks that the line gets blurred a little too often between the two sports?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to sit and think about it, because I think that most people understand that that's entertainment. It's like when watching a movie. If I see an actor who's a professional fighter and he goes and does a movie, I don't start thinking, I'm like, is he really? I'm like, oh, that's a different medium of entertainment. There's live fighting, and then there's watching a movie, and I really just perceive pro wrestling as just another form of entertainment. Now it's live soap opera where guys are extremely athletic, and I've always been a fan of the sport, of the realm of entertainment, just because you see a guy that size and they move around and jump around, and the injuries they receive, it's not like it's completely safe. If anything would make me maybe hesitate, I'd be like, hey guys, if I'm ever going to go here, I want some really good training, because that guy looks like he's going to break his neck doing what he's doing. If I try to do that, I might not make it out of here. So.
Rampage just actually tried to train and then literally admitted he was like, this is too tough, I'll do it down the road.
I 100%
can't handle it.
Yeah.
Last question, Frank. Your buddy Roy Nelson has actually applied for the Nevada Athletic Commission gig. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, I heard it earlier in the week.
I mean, how does that make you feel? I mean, obviously it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but I mean, do you think he can do a good job? And if not, what type of person would you like to see in a role like that, such a controversial role in the sport over the past few years?
Well, I feel that Mark Ratner was a phenomenal commissioner, and then Keith Kaiser, I think, has done an excellent job also. I mean, really honest. I think somebody just has to have a passion for sports in general, because there's an interest to be drawn there. And just somebody with a clear mind that is unbiased and able to make analytical decisions. By sitting there and breaking down what's going on and understanding things. I think Roy has a background that understands MMA, obviously. So I mean, that would be an attribute. But then, would he be biased because he came from being a fighter? Does he always have issues with organizations? Or is he going to, and I think that, whenever I want anybody in a political position, I want them to be as unbiased and unknowledgeable, have no merit, in the outcome either way that doesn't affect them because of their past. I think they make a more concise and clear-cut decisions. When you have somebody, I don't want someone making a decision on, abortion who is part of the Catholic Church. Well, obviously the guy's a biased decision, right? And so that's just my viewpoint, that you have to be as unbiased and secular as possible.
Not the first time Roy Nelson and abortion have been mentioned in the same paragraph, Frank. Best of luck to you, man. Fantastic suit.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Frank, you touched upon retirement just now. What about legacy? What do you want people to say about you in 10, 15 years?
Somebody that was able to really, I went out there, I'm not really different than just everybody else. I mean, it's a weird statement, but I think some people feel that, a fighter has this killer instinct ingrained in them, and they're just these individuals that were something different, a different breed of human being. I've always thought that was silly. So if one thing I could bring to the game besides my expertise in the octagon, my submission abilities, obviously, first things that would come to mind, but my ability to convey through my ability to speak, to say, hey, no different than you, I'm just as scared, I'm just as worried, this is what's going through my mind, this is how I overcame it, I choked here and overanalyzed here, and so I can bring an understanding of the world of martial arts. So because I love the sport so much, maybe that's what I always loved about the commentate, if people can go, hey man, my mother-in-law watches now because he was speaking and she now understands a little bit more about this. She just kind of thought it was a barbaric, teach ties going at it, laying on the ground, and had a few remarks about what it's like to have two men half naked wrestling with each other, what she thought it looked like, and then to hear me speak, she understood it to a greater ability and now enjoys the sport. So if I can bring more people to the sport through understanding, I guess that'd be the best legacy I could leave.
You had to come back from a badly broken leg. I think it was your femur that was broken. If you were to give Anderson Silva some advice with his broken leg and his recovery, what would it be?
Well, I think the one thing is you have to take everything seriously. I think sometimes as fighters, we, myself included, because you become successful doing things that other people don't think can be done, we start bringing that as that inertia goes into other aspects of our life. It's like, well, you can't fight here. I jumped in there and did this, so I'm able to push it harder than the average human being. And you're right, there's a mental aspect that allows certain guys to push it farther. But no matter how hard and strong your mind is, you're still made of flesh and bone. So, when it comes to rehab and recovering, when you sit there, I mean, you hear all athletes say it, like, oh, I just had knee surgery, I'll come back in 2 months, I'll do it. It's like, you might mentally push it, and you could probably get out there, but your body's still going to break down, and that's when you guys get re-injure themselves and hurt themselves. I think that's one thing that probably haunted Dominic Cruz. I think that after his different surgeries, and, definitely got back too soon in the gym and would always re-hurt himself, and that's what stuck him in the situation he is in now. So I would tell, Anderson Silva to be like, you're mortal. Treat yourself like you're mortal, and it'll come out better in the end.
There was a...
You're not talking about retirement right now. Is there a time frame that you kind of contemplated?
When people talk about whether, risk, benefits to my family and whatnot, about, the trials and the tribulations I put them through getting ready for fights and camps. Honestly, the biggest factor for me is right now in the household, my career comes first. If we go on a vacation or we're going to go out to the movies that night, everything is really decided and weighted by how it's going to affect my training or my preparation, or if I have an interview or whatnot. My kids, their school and their sporting really have to mold around that. So my daughter right now is 10. My two sons are 8 and going to be 5 here soon, respectively. 4 years old, and I want to be a dad eventually, that I'm just the dad. My kids are the superstars, and they go out there and they play their sports. And when I go to wrestling practice now, I bring my kids with me, but I'm wrestling too live and training on a move. And I look over and I can see my daughter hitting doubles, but I want to get to a point where I put on my wrestling shoes and I walk over there and I help her with an arm bar or a move, a submission, and I can sit back and I'll still move around and roll and have a good time. But when my kids are going, Dad can watch them. So as they're getting older, I think definitely by the time my daughter hits high school, which 5 years, 14. I think that's be the biggest, strongest one. You're probably going to see me really telling the wife, like, hey, it's done. One thing's being gone on the weekends just for commentating, but during the week, when I'm in the gym, I want to be dad and not, well, that's Frank Mir over there training, and his kids are on the side training too, but we're in the room together, but it's not the same. You know what I mean? Because, can you imagine going to baseball practice and your dad's Roger Clemens, he's going to go to pitching practice. You can be over there in the batting cages working, but he's not really paying attention. attention to you. You know what I mean? Like, hey son, I saw the 1 second. You know, no, he's walking around now, and his kid's his kid, and you know, he's no longer the center of attention.
Frank, high school, that's when you have to start fighting guys off.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll, you know, I have a couple rules. You can only date like guys in the wrestling room, so I have access to them.
Would you let your kids fight?
Sorry, you're still 34 and you're fighting top level guys all the time. Why do you think people are asking for time every interview I hear is about that?
Well, I just think because on the surface, for the casual fan, you hear 3 losses in a row. It didn't matter if I lost to Superman, Hulk, and Wolverine. It's like, oh, you lost 3 fights in a row. I think that, you know, obviously, I think the press, obviously, you guys are much more, you know, depth of understanding of the MMA world, you know, more so than me as a fighter. I don't think I get it from you guys so much as that you're asking on behalf of, you know, people you have to write for have to sit there and go, well, he's lost 3 in a row. It's like, well, yeah, but he lost to Junior Dos Santos and Daniel Cormier and Josh Barnett. There's a lot of heavyweights that if they had that, you know, could possibly be in the same situation.
Lose or leave down match kind of thing bothered you and got you at all? I mean, I've heard people say whoever loses these fights out. It's kind of unfair way to build it.
You know, I mean, it's interesting and it gets people to listen and tune in, and I understand that. Like, you know, it brings attention to our bout. But as far as it's a different statement. Like, I mean, the only thing that bugs me about it is I don't really want to fight for another organization. I don't know if I'm capable of doing it. Honestly, if the UFC says, hey, it's over with us, you can't make us money anymore. Do I really want to go somewhere else? I really don't think so. My initial response is no, but I also haven't spoken to other people, and you know, money talks. You know, I don't know. But that being said, I'm not, like my wife broke it down the other day. She goes, you know, hey, I'll be the first one. If you go out there and you get knocked out 3 or 4 fights in a row where it's like you're doing the dead chicken on the ground and you're losing to guys that are like up and coming and, you know, and not even like, you know, top 5 guys, you know, she goes, yeah, I'm going to push you, you know, hey, we're going to have a talk and intervention. She goes, it's not really the case. She goes, you're not really losing like that. You're not really losing to those guys. You're losing to guys that are, it's like, hey, man, tough guys.
Nobody from the UFC